Yeah, hi everybody. So yeah, as you know, my name's André. I'm one of the co-founders of Fleming Protocol. So in essence, we're building, as mentioned, decentralized platforms bringing together patients, scientists, and healthcare professionals, hackers, to build new products that tackle unmet healthcare needs. And one of the kind of key elements of what we're building is kind of launching the concept of a patient DAO, because we believe that this will be the future driving force in biomedical innovation going forward. So to start off, I'm going to basically talk through one of the kind of inspirations and stories for what we're building. It's the story of the We Are Not Waiting movement, which is an open source diabetes movement which happened was started in 2012. And in essence, this was a community of patients and carers and hackers who were unhappy with what the devices which are being produced by the medical industry, because what was being produced wasn't really helping to reduce the burden of diabetes, and yet there were still known methods in which they could implement, but they weren't. So as a result, this community basically came together online, open source, and in essence created a product which better meets their needs, as opposed to what the industry was providing. So the result was, in essence, a unprecedented level of innovation in the diabetes space, which was never before seen across all the different products that are developed in the diabetes space. So in essence, what was the result was the creation of the automated insulin delivery system, which is now seen as the standard of care in diabetes, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest that greatly improves the quality of life and outcomes for people with diabetes. And whilst this was created by patients, 5 to 7 years later, the industry actually, in essence, adopted this technology because they can see how beneficial it could be. And because of that, this new innovation created by patients is now the key driver behind the insulin delivery devices market, which is currently at 13 billion per year. So yeah, that kind of shows that if you do kind of adopt what patients need or even listen to them, although it wasn't quite listening, it can lead to large economic benefits as well as improved outcomes for patients. Sorry. So in essence, what I think this kind of demonstrates to us is that our key assumption is that patient innovation will lead to the next biggest companies, and you have the organizations like A16Z who predict that the next biggest companies over the next several decades will be consumer health tech companies. But given the current structures in industry, it makes it very difficult for patient movements like the We Are Not Waiting movement to actually flourish and actually have a meaningful impact on the industry. Because the way that they distribute funds doesn't always align with what patients want. And at the same time, they actually see engaging with patients as a burden. And if you look at some of the really key innovations, not just in diabetes, but also in rare diseases, also the AIDS movement in the 1980s, you find that when there's a widespread, more open movement of patients who are kind of testing products and also sharing data to generate evidence, it actually leads to some really good innovations. And yeah, in essence, just to kind of summarize and conclude that point, being able to collaborate with patients in a more meaningful way, as I've described, will ultimately birth the next generation of biomedical innovations. And some of you may have heard of a guy called Thomas Kuhn. So he wrote a book about the revolutions in science and basically how they happen. And one of his key quotes was, a sense of malfunction is the prerequisite to revolution. And I think hence why the D-side movement is here. There's plenty of signs of this malfunction. So for example, there was a study published in Nature earlier this year, which basically demonstrated that the rate of disruptive science is actually on the decline. And also very recently, there was a paper by the House of Commons, which basically raised some concerns about the integrity of the research, so like the reproducibility of data, etc. And I think this has been touched on in a variety of ways throughout the day, but there's also some funding limitations. So basically how pharma distributes their funding, at least to certain areas which are underfunded, but also the NIH funding, which is like a public body in the US. only 20% of applications, or less than that, actually receive funding from the NIH. So actually, there's a lot of scientists who apply but don't actually get any funding. So basically, all of this kind of results in the intellectual capability of scientists within pharma as well as academia being constrained, both with the structures but also the funding limitations. And ultimately, I think DeSci is going to be a very promising way to unlock that potential. So yeah, this kind of gives a bit more detail on the concept of patient DAOs. So in essence, as I said, we're basically building the structures to basically empower patient communities as well as their collaborators to address unmet needs. And the three key elements is, so we're going to be launching patient peer networks. So basically discussion platforms where they can share discussions and data and identify ideas that tackle unmet healthcare needs. This will be overlaid with governance and funding capabilities. So in essence, overlaying these patient peer networks with a DAO, so they can collectively distribute funding to what they kind of identify as a need. And we're also building collaboration tools to, in essence, enable researchers and patients to do more impactful science outside of traditional institutions. So a bit more on the patient peer network. So in essence, people will have profiles which will be linked to their various contributions to the community, also the projects that they're involved or launching. And there'll be some NFTs to basically represent their identity and their contributions to the community. And that will come with certain governance responsibilities and economic incentives. Yeah, a key part of the peer networks is having these discussion platforms. So in essence, this will be a place for patients to discuss the unmet needs and share data in a privacy-preserving way. And this will be, in essence, the basis for understanding the unmet needs in those patient communities. And we're going to be looking to implement some machine learning tools to basically look at the community sentiment of the real-time discussion. And in essence, this will ultimately result in information which scientists and patients can use to create proposals which can be submitted to the DAO. And then once those proposals are submitted, we'll have a fair kind of voting mechanism where patients and other community members can then vote on the proposals which need to, which demonstrate benefit. But whilst there's that voting mechanism, we're also looking to build some governance and due diligence processes as well. So we're going to be having working groups which will have nominated scientists, commercial experts, as well as leading patients to basically vet some of the proposals to make sure they actually stack up commercially as well as scientifically. And assuming that all goes okay, that proposal will be funded, and the proposal lead would then deliver that proposal alongside the community. And just very briefly on the collaboration tools that we're building. So the first tool, although we are exploring others at the moment, is the decentralized research platform, which in essence is an online platform where scientists and other researchers can upload their protocols and more easily connect with patients to conduct their research in a more decentralized and digital manner. So yeah, in essence, they would upload their protocols, patients can browse the project data marketplace, and if they obviously fit the criteria, they can enroll, and then they can submit data through their devices, their phones, or their apps, etc., in line with the study protocol that aligns with the project that they joined. And yeah, we're also going to be building some real-time data analytics tools, so basically a more visual way for the researchers, etc., to kind of see the outcomes of the data which is being submitted. So ultimately, I think what DeSci and what we're doing will lead to the domestication of biomedical sciences. So there's a scientist called Freeman Dyson who basically predicted that this would happen. And he kind of recounted a story in the 1950s when him and John von Neumann were debating the domestication of computing power. So basically, von Neumann predicted that that wouldn't happen. He thought that the computing power would be reserved for rich countries and big corporations. But Dyson actually predicted the opposite. He actually thought that computing power would be distributed to the masses. And And obviously, if you look fast forward to today, you can see that pretty much every home has a laptop, computer, or a phone, etc. And people have created companies and really impactful products on that basis. And Freeman Dyson, whilst he predicted that in the computing age, an era, he also predicted that this would happen in the biomedical sciences. And I think, in essence, what DeSci is offering in terms of bringing more people in and providing funding and tools will be the perfect vehicle for that. So to conclude, in essence, Patient DAOs provide a new funding source which has never been available to them. So typically, they rely on the pharma companies and academia to fund and tackle unmet health needs, but that hasn't been reliable. So there's going to be a very powerful mechanism for that. And so I think Yuan Bene, for example, actually predicted that one day the funding available in DAOs and in crypto will actually rival the budget of nation states. I'm guessing that'll be some time, but obviously I think it will happen, I believe, one day. And also DeSci just is a great way to actually empower patients and other collaborators in a way that hasn't really been available or possible before. So it provides a mechanism for them to actually have genuine data autonomy and the ability to control their data. But also, as I mentioned, we're creating the tools to enable patients and others to actually do groundbreaking science, which is outside of traditional structures. So ultimately, what this results in is when patients can basically aggregate and come together in this way, they'll have a leverage in the traditional system which they haven't had before. I think when we provide this leverage to patient communities, we'll ultimately lead to much better discoveries and products. And I think with that will follow economic benefits for the corporations that collaborate, but also some of this will flow to the DAOs as well, because we want to build that mechanism as part of this. So yeah, that's the end of the presentation. I'm leading you here with a quote from one of our partners, Night Scout, one of the founders, Ben West, which really kind of captures why we're here as a company. In essence, we're just here to build the mechanisms to allow patients to live the lives that they want to lead. And ultimately, this comes from providing the therapies and products, devices that reduce the burden of disease so that they don't have to think about it as much. So yeah, that's why we're here. Thank you.